My name is David Ondrej, and here is how to build AI agents with Docker. The release of Claude 3.5 Sonnet just started an entirely new era of AI agents. A few days ago, Anthropic released this state-of-the-art model, which is far better than GPT-4o. I'll show you how to build AI agents with Sonnet 3.5 to automate any part of your work or life. You have to build agents now. In a few months, OpenAI will release GPT-5, pouring gasoline on the agent revolution. Now is the time to learn this. If you wait, the opportunity might be gone. But David, I don't know how to code. Well, I designed this tutorial so that anyone, even non-programmers, can follow along. Yes, there will be code. However, I will explain everything simply and easily. Now that 3.5 Sonnet exists, you don't even have to write the code. This is a historical moment, and I'm not over-exaggerating. The arrival of AI agents will fundamentally change how computing is done. Before, we only have developers and APIs. Well, now we have devs, APIs, and agents. The fact that developers no longer have to be in the loop will let us automate nearly anything. But you have to build safe agents, because runaway behavior is perhaps the biggest risk when building AI agents. So maybe an AI agent deleting some important files, or an AI agent messing up your system, all of these can happen. Docker fixes this. It lets you build and deploy your agents in separate containers. Every single professional developer uses Docker, and so should you. Plus, I was lucky enough to have Docker sponsor this video. Now, Sonnet 3.5. A few days ago, Anthropic, the AI company, which is perhaps OpenAI's biggest competitor, released the best large language model in the world. It's better at speed, cost, and performance. It destroys GPT-4o, which is OpenAI's best model, in all of these areas. Another question I hear all the time is, David, which AI agent framework do I choose? And the answer is, just pick one and get started. The real benefits will be unlocked when you master one of the agent frameworks deeply. Now for this demo, I will actually not be using any framework, and I'll explain why later. Now, here is why you need Docker for building AI agents. Docker ensures that your agents run on anyone's machine. With containers, you create a controlled environment for your AI agents so nothing crazy can happen. Knowing how to use Docker will give you a huge edge over other agent developers, because let me tell you a little dirty secret. Most agent developers are still not using Docker. Agents with Sonnet 3.5. Why is it such a big deal? All the agents you built in the past, when a new, better LLM comes out, you just switch the API, which takes like 2 minutes, right? And since Claude 3.5 Sonnet just released, it's only a matter of time before everyone switches. So take advantage of this window. For agent building, the benchmarks that matter the most are reasoning, code, and instruction following. And of course, Sonnet 3.5 excels at all of these. Now, when it comes to Docker, you have to learn these 3 fundamental concepts. Number 1, a Docker file, which is super simple. It's a set of instructions telling Docker how to build and run your application. Number 2, a Docker image. This is a snapshot of a fully configured system ready to be executed. And number 3, a Docker container, which is a runnable instance of a Docker image isolated from your host system. And if this is confusing, don't worry, it'll make a lot more sense when we actually build the agent in a bit. Almost all tech startups and even big tech companies use Docker. So if you're not using Docker, you will get outcompeted by someone who does. By the way, it's just super valuable to have Docker on your resume of skills, whether that's on LinkedIn or just your CV. You have to be part of the future. AI agents aren't some far-off dream. The agent revolution is happening right now. Don't get left behind, because 99% of people will never build a single agent, therefore miss out on all the benefits. So let's get to building. The next part of the video will show you how to build an AI agent with Sonnet 3.5 step by step. Alright, so the first thing we need is VS Code. If you don't have it installed, just type in VS Code download into Google, which will bring you to this page. You can choose your operating system. If you know how to install a video game, you can install VS Code. Alright, so here I have a simple test file, hello.py. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you on a simple file how to use Docker containers. Understanding it now will set you up for success when you build complex agents. Okay, so let me tell you what we're going to be building, right? The most requested agent of all time on my channel is an agent that builds large data sets for LLM fine-tuning. And by the way, I'm open to building any agent, so if you want me to build a specific agent, comment below and I might build it in the future. So we have this project, we need to create a Docker file for it. So new file and name it Docker file. No extension. Important. This is very important. Let's use Sonnet 3.5 to help us out. So I'm in the Anthropic console right here, console.anthropic.com. I have a simple hello world Python file and I want to create a Docker file for it. So even if you have nothing, you can use Sonnet 3.5. You can use these amazing AI tools to help you get unstuck. So let's look at the Docker file, right? So the first thing you need is to set the base image. We're gonna do from Python. I'm gonna do 3.11. It doesn't really matter. Then we need to set the working directory for the container. workdir/app. Super simple. Again, I'm using the help of Sonnet 3.5. So if you get stuck at any point, just, you can type it in, or you can take a screenshot of your entire screen and just like, have the AI help you out. The only excuse is just laziness, because like you can have the AI tools do the work for you, do the programming for you. Next, we need to copy the Python script to the container. Again, super simple. Copy hello.py and then dot cmd and then Python and hello.py. And we just do Control S and boom, that's it. That's our Docker file saved. Now we need to do the Docker image. And this part is even easier. To build the Docker image, open a terminal. So I'm gonna do that in VS Code. Open up a new terminal and let's do docker build -t and we can do hello docker. This is just the name of the image, you can name it anything, and then dot enter, and this is going to start building our Docker image, and it seems like we're done in 1.2 seconds. And actually, if we go to our Docker desktop, which I highly recommend you download, it's the first link in the description. This is an amazing piece of software because it lets you see your containers and your images in Docker super easily. So a lot of people are scared of the terminal, using the terminal can be intimidating. So download Docker desktop, again, first link in the description. You'll see all the images and containers. All we need to do is docker, run, and then the name of our image. We don't have to run it in VS Code, right? So obviously we have our VS Code terminal, but you might be thinking, okay, it's the terminal, it already knows our file. No. The Docker container is completely separate. It can run anywhere, on any server, any machine, any computer, any phone. This is why Docker is necessary for building AI agents. So what we need to do is docker, run, and then the name of our image. So even if you forgot your image, go into your Docker desktop, click on images, and you have the image name right here. So let's open the terminal. Docker, run, hello-docker. Enter. And boom, our code executes. This is the beauty of Docker, man. You have to learn Docker. It's actually amazing. So again, Docker desktop is the first link in the description. Go and download it because it will make everything so much easier. So now let's get to building our agent because, again, as I said, this has been the most requested agent of all time. So let's create a new file. Let's do agents.py, empty Python file. You can close these. Again, it's an agent that will take a sample CSV file or sample dataset, and it creates thousands or tens of thousands lines of CSV in a new dataset and outputs it, right? So if you have like another suggestion of agent I should build in the future, comment below. So the first thing we need to do is obviously import the libraries. Import the necessary libraries, exactly. And for this, we need to do import OS, import CSV, because we're going to be working with CSV files. And then last, but definitely not least, import Anthropic. And by the way, if you do this for the first time, what you have to do is you have to open a terminal and you have to install the package, right? So you do pip install Anthropic. For the first time you have to do this in the terminal, you hit enter. Every time you install a library or any dependency, you should put it into a requirements.txt file. So it's literally requirements.txt. So let's copy the Anthropic and you can put it here. Now we have the imports finished and we have the requirements file. This piece of code will set the API key, and it's super simple. Like if not, meaning if there isn't an API key in the environment variable, it will ask the user, please input your Anthropic API key. So now obviously we have not done this part. We don't have any environment variable, right? So we should do that. Right click, new file, .env. Be very mindful of what I'm doing. Pay close attention. It has to be named exactly this way. Inside of the environment variable, we have to set the Anthropic API key. So you might be thinking, okay, David, but I've never used API keys. What do I do? Chill out. It's very easy. Take a deep breath. Okay. Go into the Anthropic console. So it's the same console, actually. I'm using Sonnet here, but instead of the workbench, as you can see here we're in the workbench. Here we go into the settings and click on API keys on the left. You will log in with the same account you use for Anthropic. So even if you use Claude.ai, you will log in with the same account. If you don't have an account, just register, like it's 30 seconds, right? So create key, you can name it Docker agent, create key, boom, and copy. I'm clicking on copy, and let's Control V, Control S. That's just like that. Environment file finished. And by the way, never share your API keys with anybody. I will delete this key before uploading the video. So now that we have the API key set, okay, so this block of code will create an Anthropic client. So we create a new variable named client, and we do Anthropic.Anthropic, and another variable named Sonnet. And you don't have to do this. I just like to do it for organization purposes. And we name it Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And by the way, if you're wondering like, where do I get the exact name of the model for the API? Well, just go to Anthropic documentation. So docs.anthropic.com. On the left, scroll down to models, click on models. And as you can see, you have all the model names for the API. So for Sonnet 3.5 is here, you know, Opus is here, Haiku. So I literally just copy this, and this is how you get the exact model name, so you can use it in your code. Oh, by the way, one tip with the Anthropic API key. If you're doing this for the first time, what I recommend is adding your credit card and charging like $5. That way you don't run into any issues. So now let me show you the first function we're going to use. So this is a function that's going to read a CSV file. It's going to be an example file. We're going to provide the agent, right? So we create an empty list. Then we open the file in read mode. Then we create a CSV reader object. And then we iterate for every row in the CSV reader. We append, in other words, we add a new row to the data list. So, you know, to this list, we add a new row for every line in our CSV, and then we return the list once it has all the rows. Okay, very simple function. Now we need a second function, this time for saving the CSV file, right? This one is for reading in, this one is for saving it. So again, save to CSV. This time we take 3 different parameters instead of 1. So the data, the output file, and the headers. And by default it's set to none, meaning if we don't specify it, it's fine. It will assume there are none, but we can override this, right? And this line of code is my favorite. It's such a cool line of code, man. So we set a variable mode, and the mode equals W, which is write mode, if headers, meaning if we have headers, else it's append mode. So actually this is very good because you understand the 3 main modes for working with files. Read, you can only read it. You cannot change anything. Write, this gives you the most power. You can delete lines, you can add lines, you can change anything about the file. A, which is append, you cannot mess with the current data. You can only add stuff at the bottom. So here, this line of code is so beautiful, man. It decides the mode based on if we have headers. Because if we don't, it just do appends. If we do, it's write mode. Okay. Next, we open the file again, output file. This time we set the mode for the variable, and we set it as F. We create a new object as before. If the headers were provided in the parameter, in the argument when calling the function, we will write a new row header. So the first row will be, obviously the headers of the CSV file. But if they aren't, because if there aren't, this is skipped. And then we do a simple for loop. For every row in the CSV reader, we do data split lines. So split the data string into rows and then iterate. And then we write all the rows. Now, I know some of you might be like, oh my God, what is all this code? Like, I'm getting lost. Here is a simple tip, what you should do, right? Anytime you don't understand anything, you can use either ChatGPT or Anthropic, but don't get overwhelmed. So what you can do is you can take a screenshot, put it inside of here, right? You can literally do like, let's say I don't understand the imports, right? Or whatever. Let's say I don't understand the Docker file. Well, I'm just gonna take a screenshot of this, go into ChatGPT, paste it inside, boom, and like explain this. I am a beginner programmer. I have no idea what any of this means. Answer in short, right? Boom. And you can do the same, obviously, in the Anthropic console. So here I pasted the last function. I can do like, explain what this code does in simple terms. And I do enter. And like this, like look at this. This code defines a function called save to CSV that saves the data to a CSV, separate values file. Here is a simple explanation. It takes 3 inputs. It decides whether to write it. So like, not knowing how to code is just an excuse. It really is, because you can learn everything with these tools. But even if you don't want to learn it, you can just use them and like paste a screenshot. Let's say you have, you're stuck, you're getting some error. Take a screenshot, paste it inside, describe what's happening, and it was explain, right? This is a Docker file used to create a Docker image for a Python application. Here's a breakdown. Super simple. So if any point of this video you feel like, okay, this is over my head, I'm getting overwhelmed, pause, take a screenshot, go into the Anthropic console or inside of ChatGPT, it doesn't really matter. Paste the screenshot inside and ask it, and it will explain. It really is amazing, and it's kind of crazy how many people still don't take advantage of this feature. Just take advantage of the screenshots. The vision capabilities of these models are just wild. Okay, so now let's get to building agents. We have the 2 functions for the CSV, but the best part is obviously building AI agents. So first, I'm going to do an analyzer agent, which is going to analyze the data we give it to gather insights and to, learn the formatting. So, as you can see, we have some underlined stuff. So we'll take care of that when we get to it. So, as you can see, create an analyzer agent. And again, this is simple def, meaning we define a function named analyzer agent, which takes the sample data as the parameter. Okay, so message, this is how you ping the Anthropic API. So this is the syntax. Again, You don't have to learn this because it's all in the docs. It's all in the docs, so you can go into Anthropic documentation, click on Quick Start, and literally scroll down, right? There's like explain everything. So how, you know, pip install Anthropic, we did that, you know, export API key, and this is how to get a message, right? It's all in the docs. Anytime you're stuck at anything, just look up the documentation for it. Literally, this is exactly what I'm doing. I don't even remember it myself. I just look up the documentation when I need something, right? So again, use the documentation, use the models, like the combination of these two. There's very few things you cannot build with a combination of documentation and AI models, actually. Anyways, let's get back, right? So model, we set the model to Sonnet. This is our variable we set earlier. Then we do max tokens, which is the response, right? Limit the response to 400 tokens. Each token is like roughly one word translates to 0.70, no, one token translates to 0.75 words, right? So each word is roughly 1.33 tokens. So this will give you like, I don't know, 350 words roughly, right? And we don't need more than that in a response. Temperature, you know, this is basically the randomness or creativity as you can think about it. For the analyzer, I want to do low. 0.1, it's very low. And as the comment says, that way the agent is more focused and more deterministic, less random. Now, this is the system prompt, right? As you can see, like, okay, David, but why is it underlined? Well, because this variable does not exist. So let's fix that. I'm going to put these into a separate file, just, you know, so you can see it's more organized, easier to understand. So create a new file. Let's do prompts.py. New Python file for the prompts. Let me put the comments, prompts.py at the top. That way you can always see what's happening. And actually have the prompts prepared. So here are all the prompts we're going to be using. I'm not going to read through it all, but if you want, you can get the code, the prompts, and the Docker files inside of my community. It's going to be linked below. Everything is in there, including all the stuff I've built in my previous videos. Anyways, let's continue. Now we have it, you know, we have the analyzer system prompt, generator system prompt, but they're not showing up here. And that is because we need to import it, right? So we do from prompts, import, and then asterisk, which imports everything. Prompts, it automatically notes is the prompts.py file because it's in the same directory, and we just import everything from it. So all the 4 variables we have inside, we import it, right? So now if we scroll down, it is no longer white. You know, it can identify the prompt. Beautiful. Then for the messages, this basically is like the history of the chat. So here you can have like so many messages. You can have role user and then role assistant, role user, role assistant, and you can have an entire chat history in here. But since this is the first message, it's very simple. We just do role user. So this is the message from the user, and then we send it. The content is the analyzer user prompt. So here we have the system prompt. Now we're using the user prompt, which is this part of the code. And we format it because, you know, we have some variables built in here. So we do that format and then sample data equals sample data, which we pass as an argument in the function. Okay, and then last at the end, we just return message.content0 at text. This is, you know, the syntax to get just the text of the message and nothing else. Okay, so this is our first agent built. All right, so here is the code for the generator agent. Very similar, but we have some more data. So this time we have 3 different arguments. Analysis result, which is the result of the analyzer agent. As it takes our sample CSV, you know, with the examples, analyzes it, it will return an analysis. We're going to pass that to the generator agent so that it can see it. Then sample data, which is the same, you know, it's the data we provide. And then the number of rows. In other words, what we should, like the batch size, basically, how many rows we want the generator agent to generate. And just to give you an example, like you can, you know, do the same inside of Sonnet here. So we can maybe change this up. Let's delete this, and it's like generate 50 lines of CSV for a sample data set. Let's do for fitness exercises, whatever. And here you can see like it just generates 50 lines, right? So exercise category, equipment, difficulty, muscle group, calories burned per 30 minutes, recommended reps, recommended sets. So pretty thorough CSV for, you know, such a simple prompt. As you can see, it just generates lines of code. And here we got stuck. You know, here we got stuck because, as you can see in the model settings, we only did 800. So if we up that to like 3000, if we do again, it will generate all lines, all 50 lines, no problem. So it's just like, you know, boom. So yeah, 30, I have like set default to 30. Obviously you can override that, but yeah, it can be more. It can be probably 50, probably 70 as well. Anyways, again, model Sonnet, this time max tokens, we increase it. Here we only need 400, here we do 1500. You know, if you want to do more, you can do even more. You can do 3000, whatever. Depends, obviously, it's kind of correlated with this, how many rows you want to generate. Temperature, this is, pay attention, because here we have a super low temperature. Here we have a super high temperature to get the, you know, more creative, diverse output. Because we don't want all the lines of CSV to be the same. We wanted to create synthetic data, a new data set. So we want some, you know, randomness, some creativity. System prompt, we attach the generator system prompt, this one. And then, again, role user, and the content is this prompt, which has 3 variables actually. So as you can see, let's look at it. Generate, and then variable number of rows. So let's do like generate 30 new CSV rows, and then we pass in the analysis from the analyzer agent, and then the sample data which we give it. Okay. And here is actually very important to include something like this, like do not include any text before and after data, just start by outputting the new rows, no extra text. If you don't, you have to be like explicit like this. Otherwise, it'll say like, here is the data, and that can mess up the whole thing, right? It should just output the CSV, no extra comments. Okay, so now we've configured both of our agents. As you can see, the reason I'm not using any framework is because it's actually like a pretty simple team of agents. I mean, you might say like, okay, this is intimidating. We're already like 75 lines of code, but like relatively speaking, you know, we're only using 2 agents here. So we don't need like anything like advanced tools, any, you know, advanced team of agents. You know, it's very simple. And what I need is like control over it. I need like consistency. So with anytime you introduce any agent framework, it complicates things, right? And it, especially if you haven't built the framework yourself, if you don't have like intimate knowledge of how it works, it adds complexity to the project, and that is often not a good thing. So sometimes it is best to not use any framework, and in this case, I made the decision to not go with any agent framework and just, you know, do it myself. So now that we have the agents built, let's go to the main execution flow. In other words, where the program actually starts doing stuff, right? Because so far we've only defined functions, and if we don't call the functions, they will not do anything. Okay, so main execution flow. First, we need to get input from the user. So file path, meaning where is the CSV file and what's the name of the CSV file. We do enter the name of your CSV file. So in our case, let me show you what I have. So I have like a super simple file. So this is the file, and you might be like, okay, I don't have a sample data set. Chill out, okay? I created this literally with ChatGPT. So as you can see, these are the headers. First row is headers, so threat type. This is for cybersecurity. Indicator of compromise, severity level, and mitigation steps. So as you can see, it's just 20 lines. And this was literally created with ChatGPT. So, I mean, I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch, right? So let's open up a new chat, and I can do create, okay, give me 10 ideas for a simple data set for LLM fine tuning. And if you have your own use case, you obviously don't need the ideas because you already know, right? Okay, so let's do this, customer service emails. This is useful for basically every business, right? So let's go with idea number 1. Create a new CSV data set with 30 rows with, let's do 5 different columns, okay? So this is different from our data set because, as you can see, we have 20 rows, you know, obviously excluding the header, and then we have 4 different columns, right, in the header. Now, I'm doing 30 and 5, and it's using code interpreter to create this, right? So it imports the pandas library, and it decides the columns, email ID, customer inquiry, customer name, support response, blah, 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 and it creates the sample data. So obviously, if you want a high quality data set, you probably should go through this yourself. You should look at it as like all is correct, all is high quality, because the higher quality the examples you feed into our agent, the better the output will be. So again, you can use either of these. Probably I would use Sonnet 3.5 because it's a lot more creative. So you would use the exact same prompt, you know, create a new data set, CSV data set, 30 rows, and you would do it in Sonnet. But it doesn't matter if you use Sonnet or ChatGPT, both will work. And then you get a downloadable link to the CSV. But yeah, basically this is what we feed it. This is what we give it as an example. We give it examples of how it should look like when it's perfect. So obviously, if you do it manually, you know, you have more control. If you outsource it to ChatGPT, it's going to be there's going to be some randomness. It's not going to be as high quality, right? So I would recommend at least 20 examples in the sample data set, ideally 30, 50, the more the better, and go through it yourself, make sure it's as high quality as possible, because it really will determine everything. So here, we get the file path, so we basically ask the user input, enter the name of your CSV file, so in this case I would type in input.csv. Then, by the way, I'm going to run the agent at the end, so don't worry, all of that I'll show you, how to put it into Docker and how to run it, and how to actually take this agent yourself. So even if you don't want to take my code, I mean, if you want the code, obviously it's in the community, but if you don't want to take the code and you just want to run the container, you want to run the agent in the Docker container, I'm going to show you how to do all of that. So watch until the end. Then we do the file path, right? So the os.path.join, and we basically get the path of this file. So this is going to be in the Docker container, right? The agents py, and then it goes into /app. So if you remember, Docker file /app, and then in data, it's going to be, so file path. Then the desired rows. So this basically, again, ask the user with the input. Anytime there's input, we ask the user for the input. And then we do int, meaning it takes it and converts it into integer. Now, if you're an experienced programmer, you might be looking up at that. Okay, David, if somebody enters a string, you know, something that's not a number or a decimal point, whatever, it will throw an error. And that is correct. It will throw an error if it's not an integer, if somebody inputs like a word or whatever. But I just want to keep it simple, like it's literally one line of code. Okay, now we need to read the sample data. So we do sample data variable equals read CSV. So we're calling upon the function, the first function we've built. We're calling upon it and we pass the file path as the argument. And then we do a string of this, you know, a new variable, but this time it's a string because this is going to be a list of lists. So we need to convert the 2D list to a single string, and this is going to do that. So this is a new line character that join with the comma join row for every row in sample data. This is like a complicated syntax, but again, you don't have to understand it. In fact, Sonnet 3.5 wrote this. I didn't even write this line. So like, chill out. Anytime you see something complicated, chances are Sonnet wrote it, and I just used it because it works. You just need to keep like an overview of the project. You're basically like the CEO or a manager, and you need to know like what each part does, right? You need to understand what each of the files is for, what each function does. But if you like don't understand some complex syntax, it's absolutely fine. Like in the future, we'll just use English to program. All right, next. This is perhaps the simplest part of the code, just some print statements to update the user. So we do print and then launching team of agents, kind of giving the user some info what's happening. Then we need to analyze the sample data using the analyze agent. So analysis result, we declare a new variable and we assign it the output of the analyze agent. So we call this function and then we return the text from it, right? And we save this into the variable. Then we do analyzer agent output, just a simple print statement to kind of update what's going on. Then we actually give it the analysis result, and then we do separating line. That way, there is some spacing. You'll see when we run the agent. You'll see. That's why I'm putting these new line characters everywhere. That way it's like nicely separated. By the way, this process of me pasting in stuff and not doing any tests, this is completely different from how I actually build the agent. The way I built it is I went from super basics. I literally did one Anthropic API call, which was like, tell a joke or something trivial. And then once I got that working, I started building on top, right? I added the prompts into separate files, ran a bunch of tests until it's working. Then I added a second agent, second API call, ran more tests, until it's like working perfectly for 3 different times in a row. Then what I did is I connected the agents, then I tested that. So the building process is very different from, when I've already have it built and I'm just like showing you what I've built and like pasting in blocks of code. If you're building something, start small. Start with the super minimal viable product. Whether that's, what we did at the start, just like a simple hello Python file, so we get the Docker container working. Maybe then you add, the Anthropic API key and you get a successful API response. Then you maybe add the function to read the CSV file and you feed that into the first agent so you can see like, okay, the agent can work with the CSV file. You start small and then you add complexity until you have, hundreds of lines of code and the stuff is working. Because if you don't do this, if you go to, Sonnet and you just ask like, hey, build this, you can do that. Like you can go here and type in, all of this, you explain the scope of the project, type in all the functions you need, all of the functionality you want your agent to have, and it will build it. The thing is that if it doesn't work and you have like 200 lines of code, you're kind of screwed because like good luck debugging that, especially if you're not a good programmer. So if you're a beginner, start small. Don't rush through it. Don't be tempted by like having Sonnet do everything in the first try, everything in one prompt. No, start small, get the basic working. Once you have something trivial working, something useless, you know, tell a joke or whatever, then add one more functionality and then add one more and test it, like run 5, 10 different tests, you know, testing the code at every point of the process. And when it runs successfully, only then add more stuff. Otherwise you just get lost, and you know, once you have 100 lines of code and you don't understand the project deeply and intimately, you will be overwhelmed, like beyond overwhelmed. You will not know what to do. So don't get to that point. You have to keep a pulse on the project. You have to understand what's going on. So now let's do the output. So we need to output the file. Again, super simple part, you know, definitely compared to the functions. So we set up the output file. So new variable output files equals app data new dataset.csv. This is the name. We could name it anything. Could name it xd. Doesn't matter. I can just leave it, but yeah, whatever. New dataset.csv. That's good. Headers. We get them from sample data and 0. So obviously in programming, the first line or the first item in any list is obviously index 0. So we get the headers from the sample data. And then, so by the way, just, you know, make sure you actually include headers in your sample data. So as you can see, I have headers here. If you don't, you will get the first line. You will get this, which is not the header. So make sure you include headers. Anyways, then we save the output file using the save to CSV function. The reason why we pass an empty string as the first argument is because we're using the function to initialize the file, just to get the file created and to add the headers, not to add the actual data inside. That will be done by the generator agent. Next, we simply set the batch size to integers, right? So we decide on the batch size. Again, it could be more, it could be 50, it could be 70. I just keep it 30 for simplicity. And this is basically the number of rows we ask the generator agent to generate each time it runs. And then we do generated rows. So this is a counter to keep track of how many rows we have generated so far. So obviously we set it to 0 because we start with 0 rows generated. Now, this is the main part. This is where the magic is done. A while loop. So we generate the data in batches until we reach the desired number of rows. So this keeps running while generated rows is smaller than desired rows. So, you know, the user obviously sets the desired rows. So you decide how many rows you want. Let's say you want 5,000, right? So as long as we have generated less than 5,000 rows, this loop will keep running. So first off, we calculate how many rows to generate in the next batch. So we basically set the minimum value, either batch size or this. This is only for that, you know, when we're approaching the end, it might be less than the batch size. So this is obviously the main part. Here we create a variable and we call the generator agent and we pass it everything, right? The result of the analysis from the analyzer agent, the sample data in the string format, and how many rows it should generate. Then we append the data, meaning we add it to our file, which only has headers. You know, when the first time it runs, it only has headers, but then every time it runs again, it already has some data. So we do save to CSV again. This time we don't pass an empty string. This time we paste the generated data, the output from the generator agent. Again, output file, but we don't need to include the headers because we've already done that. And then we simply update the generated rows because we need to keep track of this integer. Otherwise, it would run forever. The while loop would never end, right? So we need to update it. And we just do plus equals, which means, you know, we add the rows to generate. So how many rows were generated in this run, in this batch, we simply add it to the number of generated rows in total. And then we simply print out the progress update. So print generated number of rows out of desired rows. Beautiful. And the last thing we need to do is inform the user that we're done. So when we're done, it's going to print out this statement. All right, so our agent is finished, but before we can test it, we actually should build the Docker container first. And that is because, as you can see, we've already, we've already built it with Docker containers in mind. So you would have to change all of this, the files if you wanted to run it locally. But this is built for containers. So let's build the Docker file for the agent. Okay, so again, let's use this, right? I have a project. I have a Python project, and I need your help to build a Docker file for it. Here is the code, and I'm going to show you actually a cool thing that many people don't know. variables inside of the Anthropic console. So we have the code here. And actually, let me take a screenshot. Of our Explorer of all the files we have inside, right? I'm gonna do like this, boom, and it sees what we have, right? But here's the code. You do this, and I put it just, you know, so it's organized. And this is basically a variable. So we do code, and then if I want to run it, it's gonna ask me for the variable, right? So here I do the agents.py. It's gonna be set as the variable. So boom. Now it's green, so it you know, sees it. I can say on the screenshot you see all the files in my project, and we also you can do this. Actually, you know what? I can just give it all the files, whatever. the only thing in my requirements.txt is Anthropic. What else it needs to know? You just give it everything, right? I can say like, I've built the project with Python 3.11. You give it all of the information you have, right? Let's say, okay, the environment variable, right? I don't want to include the env file in the Python, in the Docker image. So it will exclude it, it will ignore it, and it will do that by its own. So, you know, I'm just specifying it. Let's see. Okay, and that could be it. Let's see. Okay, do you need to know anything else from me? If not, write the Docker file. And again, I'm just going to use Sonnet to help me write the Docker file, right? So based on the information provided, I can create a Docker file for the project. And as you can see, this time it's a bit longer, because we have a more complicated project. But that's fine, because I didn't write it. Keep in mind, I didn't write it. I just had it write for me. So okay, let's delete this. Let's change this up. So, you know, Python 3.11 same working directory. It takes all the requirements and copies them into container. Then it installs all the dependencies. Then it copies the Python scripts, creates a directory for the data, and sets the environment variable for Python. I don't know if we need this. Unbuffered mode. I'm not sure. Okay, wait, maybe let me change this. The code will ask the user to input their own API key. Okay, maybe I should have clarified that. We'll see. We'll see if the Docker changes in any way. Yeah, it removes that line. So yeah, even simpler. Beautiful. But yeah, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, and we have the Docker file finished. So now let's build the Docker image. All right, so let's see if yeah, Sonnet gave us the instructions how to build this image. All right, so super simple. We can name it like Docker agent, whatever. But yeah, let's pull up the terminal. Docker build, and let's do Docker agents, and dot. This is gonna build the Docker image for this. Last time it took 1.7 seconds, but obviously this time we have a bigger project, more dependencies, more lines of code, and it's finished. How many? 9 seconds, less than 10 seconds. Beautiful. So now we can run the Docker container. I should probably specify this, like also give me a .docker ignore file first, because the Docker ignore file, which we haven't yet created, new file .docker ignore, this will tell Docker what it should not package in the image and in the container, right? So we don't want the environment file to be there. So as you can see, we have a bunch of stuff. So yeah, okay, Docker ignore environment, and then env and that git ignore. Yeah, if you had this, you know, connected to GitHub, it would not get the git file. So this is good. We have the Docker ignore file, beautiful. I'm gonna copy the Docker file because I've already made it. So this is the Docker file that I've pre-prepared, but as you can see, basically 2 lines more. We expose the port and we do copy everything from current directory. And then we also, in the pip install, we install all of the requirements, which in this case is only Anthropic. But let's say you used an agent framework, maybe CrewAI, you would have CrewAI in here, right? So all of the requirements are in this text file, so we install them. So this is super simple. So now let's build it out. Docker build T, and we do Docker agents dot, and this will override the current image, will update it, right? Based on the Docker file. So we can actually see it inside of our little app here, Docker desktop. Here are the images, right? 0 seconds ago created, Docker agents, status unused. So we haven't used it yet. It's 178 megabytes, sorry. That would be pretty crazy. Well, yeah, 178 megabytes Docker agents, but now we can run it, right? So again, let's open up a completely different terminal, one we haven't used yet. Let's do Anaconda prompt. So as you can see, we are in base, no environment. We are not in the same directory. What you need to do is you need to run it, because we need to give it a what's called volume, right? Because, okay, I'm gonna explain this. Here we have volumes in here, right? And basically, containers can use volumes to store data, right? So we can create a volume here. We can do CSV files. I'm gonna show you how to do. Let's do files, whatever. Datasets. Okay, create. And here, this is a volume where we can put inside some files. Now you can do this either through the Docker desktop app, or you can just do it from a command line. I'm going to show you how to do it from the command line, from the terminal, because when we're launching, you can do it like a parameter when you're launching the Docker container. So you do Docker run, and now we need to do IT, because this is a iterative, it needs to get the input, right? If you remember, in our code, we ask for input multiple times. So for example, here, we need the name of the CSV file, and then we ask for desired rows, how many rows they want to generate. So we need to be in interactive mode. Now we need to do WV, which sets the volume, and you might be like, okay, where do I put the volume? Okay, so you need to create a folder. Obviously you can use the volumes in the app, but I'm just going to show you how to do it through a default folder, right? So here I have a simple folder on my PC, Docker, and I have the files here. So you can obviously put your own file here that you created with the system I told you, either with ChatGPT or Sonnet. But basically here you would put the test file. So all of these are test files, customer service emails. Okay. So these two I have test files, and now we can access these when we give it the directory. So the way to do that is you right click on the file and you click on details. I mean, actually, it's in general. So here, the location. This is the exact location of the file. So you copy this and you put it in here, and then you do :/app/data, and then you do the Docker image. So we do Docker agents, and that should be it, right? Let's do enter. Beautiful. So it wants our API key, and the reason for that is because it doesn't know the environment variable. So we have the API key in here, but we put it into the Docker ignore. So the .env file is ignored, meaning it's not built into our image, meaning because of this line of code at the start, if you have a good memory, you remember, if there is not the Anthropic API key in the environment variable, we ask the user for the key. So this is working as exactly as intended. So let's copy the key, Control-C. In the terminal, you actually cannot do Control-V, you have to right-click, enter. Now we need to enter the name of our CSV file. So we have two files in this folder, test input and customer service. We can actually test both, to see that the agent works well. We do test input.csv. You have to put it exactly, don't make a mistake here. Number of rows, I'm gonna do 65, and the reason for that is, I'm doing 30, so we're gonna see if it can run 3 times. We're launching the team of agents, so now, fingers crossed, we get an Anthropic API response. Okay. So this is the analyzer agent, as you can see. Analyzer agent output, I'll provide a concise summary. Okay, so formatting, it analyzed how the dataset is formatted. What the dataset represents, the dataset is a catalog of various cybersecurity threats, yes, and their characteristics, how new data should look. Beautiful. And now, generating new data, generated 30 out of 65. So if we go into the folder, we should see a new dataset, beautiful. We see a new dataset.csv, which, okay, it's finished. So that was pretty fast. I mean, only 65 rows. But if we go in here, we have a brand new dataset of 65, obviously, +1 is the header, new cybersecurity threats that we could use to train we could fine-tune any LLM with this. Okay, so let's double check that it works by doing the different file, right? So do CLS, and again, Docker run iterative, and then volume, and for the volume, we need to give the folder. So again, this time we'll do the customer service one. I'm going to delete it because we're going to create a new one. So copy the location of your file, wherever your file is stored, just copy that, boom, then do semicolon /app/data. If you remember, this is exactly what we did in the code, right? So let me pull it up here. /app/data. So this is just, you know, doing what we have in the code. That way it's in the same directory. And then you simply put the name of the Docker image. In this case, Docker agents. And if you forgot what your image is called, open up your Docker desktop, click on images, Docker agents in use. Boom. And you can see the containers here. It's created 4 minutes ago. Yeah. So Docker agents and hit enter. Boom. It needs the API key. So let's create a new one. Blah, blah, blah. Create a key. Copy key. Right click. Enter. CSV file. Let's do the different one. Okay, so let's close these. Yeah, let's do the customer service CSV. So customer service.csv. Boom. Let's do more rows. Let's do 110 this time. Okay. And it's launching our team of agents. So this is so good because it's in a container, meaning you can run it yourself. So I'm going to put this actually on Docker Hub, which let's do that now. Docker Hub, and you know what? Let's use our friend. By the way, what I just did is I added the conversation, right? So right now it's not adding automatically. You might be used from ChatGPT that is like automatically storing history. It's not doing that in the console, and that's because you can change the prompt and like only add it when you're happy with it, right? So if you're happy with this response and you want it to be referenced in all future conversations, you simply click on add to conversation, it moves it to the left, and now you can ask another prompt and it's in the history of the chat. So this is, you know, why the console is more advanced and why, you know, in ChatGPT it's automatically saved, so people don't have to do this. But let's see. Now I want to make my Docker container available to the public, to everyone watching this video. Shout out. Let's do, especially to ones who subscribe, wink wink, subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, how do I do this? Tell me how. Okay, I'm gonna do tell me how to use Docker Hub. I edited this prompt instead of moving that one into conversation because that one had incomplete information, so I don't want to move it permanently into our chat history. Okay, so we created a Docker Hub account. You know, I just literally used my Gmail. Super simple. It's the same account actually used for Docker. Log into Docker Hub on your local machine. Docker login. Okay, so let's do that. CLS, Docker login, boom. Login succeeded, okay. And that is because we have already Docker installed. Tag your Docker image. Your image needs to be tagged with your Docker Hub username. Yeah, so, okay. I should use the same name. So, images, Docker agents. It should be exactly this name, right? But I would like to use a different name for the container I make public. All right, we run it again. So this is why oftentimes you don't put the conversation to the history, because you update the prompt because your prompt was incomplete. Okay, so this is how we do it. Docker tag, Docker agents, your Docker Hub username, which in this case, it's just David Ondrej 1. Somebody took David Ondrej. Unfortunate. Docker tag, Docker agents. And then we do the username, right? Okay. Slash, and then the name we want. David Ondrej 1 slash, and I'm gonna do dataset-agent. And what is it? Column latest. Latest, yes. Okay. Let's do enter. Okay. Push the tagged image to Docker Hub. Docker push your Docker username. All right. Docker push, and then David Ondrej 1 slash dataset-agent latest. Enter. Once the push is complete, your image will be available on Docker Hub. Anyone can now pull and use your image with Docker pull. Okay, so let's do that. Click on your repository, my profile, dataset-agent, beautiful. This is the command. This is literally the command. Docker pull David Ondrej 1 dataset-agent latest. So what I'm gonna do actually, I'm gonna go into my Docker desktop, delete the containers, right? So let's delete these two that are based on this image. So we have no containers, and I'm also gonna delete the image, by the way. Boom, boom, delete this image. Now, in the terminal, let me run this. and I'm gonna pull my own container, which is on the Docker Hub, even though I deleted everything from my computer, right? So now if I go to Docker, yeah, so now I see this image, David Ondrej dataset-agent latest. So now I should be able to run it. Okay, so let's try it. This is so good. So Docker run, obviously iterative, and then we do the volume, which again, we need to get the file. So this is closed, and this, okay. So again, let's do this. This is the customer service one. Boom, boom, colon, app/data. And now we need to change it up because I'm not using, it locally. I'm not using my local one, like I would do like hello Docker. I'm using this one, right? So we have to do exactly this. I have to do David Ondrej 1/dataset-agent. Since it's no longer, I'm using, the one I downloaded from the Docker Hub. Enter, and Anthropic API key. Okay, dude, this is so exciting. It's kind of crazy. Let me get a new one. Okay, boom, again, create a new API key, create a key copy, paste it in, enter, name of the CSV file, customer support CSV, customer service, oh my god, okay, whatever. That's a mistake on my part, yeah, customer service. 500, let's do big time, and we're gonna launch our team of agents, and this is it. This is it, you can run this on your own machine because it's on Docker Hub. You can pull this repo and run this team of agents. As you can see, I'm generating a brand new data set. For this time is the customer support, before is the cybersecurity. You can do it for anything, any use case you have in your business, and you can have it automatically running, generating data, synthetic data for LLM fine-tuning. So wow, this is actually amazing. Guys, if you want to learn more about AI and Docker, I'm gonna leave this below, how to containerize a generative AI application. Docker has some amazing resources about AI. Definitely read this and check this out. It's going to be linked below the video. First link is going to be Docker Hub. Second link is going to be this documentation. So make sure to read it. Thanks Docker for sponsoring this video, and thanks to all of you for watching until the end. Have a great day.